Yep. Okay, welcome, members of the Community Advisory Committee. My name is Greg Wade. For those of you who are new to the committee, welcome. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Clean Energy Alliance. It's nice to see everyone who has served previously back here, and hope you all are somewhat rested from the beginning of the year, starting the beginning of the year. So the first order of business is to appoint a chair and vice chair, just as a reminder for those who have been here and to inform those who are new. The policy for the Community Advisory Committee holds that the chair shall be elected by members of this committee, as would the vice chair, that those members would serve one year and can serve no more than 2 consecutive years at a time. Thereafter, a chair may be appointed as the vice chair, and the vice chair may be appointed as the chair, but they could not serve 2 consecutive years in the same position. Then if they are neither for a period of a year, they can come back and be the chair or vice chair again. So that's the first order of business. And
Mr. Wade, could I interject? We want to do a call to order and the roll call and the flag.
Oh yeah, I jumped ahead. Okay.
Yeah. So you got a good primer of what's to come.
Okay.
Thank you. I will, it's 1:01 p.m. and I will start with a roll call. Member Kirschbaum. Member DeCino. Member Oshley.
Here.
Member Najamine. Member Daniels. Member Dominguez.
Present.
Member Norris.
Present.
Member Shade.
Got it.
Here. Member Davenport.
Here.
Member Graywall.
Here.
Member Hood. For the record, I will note that committee member Paul, Reed, and Jamison are absent.
Do we have anybody online?
Mm-mm.
Okay, my apologies for jumping ahead on the agenda, but I've introduced this first item and I'll leave it up to you all to go ahead and
Yes, we need to do the the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could have somebody volunteer to lead us. Member Shade, will you lead the Pledge of Allegiance for us today, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Thank you. For the record, we do not have any non-agenda public comment.
Okay, my apologies once again. Now I think we are finally on to item 1. Maybe we should have numbered it something else besides 1. And I've given the introduction to this item and I'll open the floor for nominations we'll start with chair and then move to vice chair.
I have a nomination.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
What's that?
This is Dolores.
Oh.
Hi, just one moment.
Okay.
I will note for the record that committee member Jamison joined the meeting at 1:04 p.m. and we're going to work on getting you onto the screen. So just one moment.
Okay.
Member Jamison, could you confirm that if there are any other adults in the room with you?
There are not.
Thank you. And you are appearing remotely due to emergency circumstances. Is that correct?
Due to illness, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
You can proceed.
Okay. I just have a nomination for chair. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I would like to nominate Deborah Shade. to serve as chair.
I'd like to second that nomination.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? No discussion. I think we move to a vote.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Member Kirschbaum. Member DeCino. Member Oshley.
Yes.
Member Najamine. Member Daniels.
Yes.
Member Dominguez. Member Norris.
Yes.
Member Davenport.
Yes.
Member Shade.
Humbly, yes.
Member Graywall. Member Hood.
Yes.
Congratulations. I think I'll let you go ahead and take over from here for vice chair.
Okay, so the second part of our item number 1 today is the nomination of one of our members to serve as the vice chair for the next calendar year. Are there any nominations?
I would nominate Paige DeCino.
All right, we have a nomination on the floor for Paige DeCino from Carlsbad.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we move to a vote? Are there any other nominations?
Or any discussion?
Are there any discussions? Okay, can I call for the vote?
Yes, thank you. Member Kirschbaum. Member DeCino. Member Oshley.
Yes.
Member Najamine.
Yes.
Member Daniels.
Yes.
Member Dominguez.
Yes.
Member Norris.
Yes.
Member Davenport.
Yes.
Member Graywall. Yes. Member Hood.
Yes.
And Chair Shade.
Yes. That passes unanimously. Congratulations, Paige DeCino. All right. So do they need to move chairs? Or is it good if she's over there?
I would say for
Okay.
today, let's stay where we're seated, and in the future, we will rearrange seating to acknowledge the chair and the vice chair seats.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll move on to item 2. First of all, thank you for your confidence, and I'm very humbled to do it. And hopefully I can meet your expectations. So with that, we will move on to item 2. This is the CAC orientation and Brown Act review.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and newly elected Chair and Vice Chair and members of the committee. So we're going to have a couple orientation slides and then Brown Act refresher. And I'll start with just by saying that the Joint Powers Authority Agreement of CEA provides that this is to orient the newly elected or appointed rather members of the committee to establish an advisory committee to assist the board implementing its operations of the Community Choice Aggregation Program. The purpose is to advise the board on matters of CCA operations as directed by the board in an annual work plan that is adopted by the board. The objectives of the board are to provide feedback, the committee to provide feedback to the board and act as a liaison between the communities the board serves and the board, and to work with staff to work on the assigned matters in the work plan. There is no decision-making authority of this committee. It is an advisory board, and moving on, the members are. Okay, this isn't working again. It did go up. Sorry about that. They are appointed to terms of 2 members per agency, a total of 14 members. They're appointed to serve staggered 2-year terms. So each of the cities have a member serving on every 2-year staggered cycles. And the members may reapply at the end of each term for a reappointment to the board, and there is no term limit. That was something that was changed over the last year, and committee members serve at the pleasure of the board. The work plan was presented to sorry, this is a little difficult to read. Hopefully you can see it. Was provided to the board at its January meeting. We meet on a bi-monthly basis. This is the first meeting of the year. We have here an outline. I won't go through everything here of the work plan and the meetings for February, April, June, August, and October of this year. And I think that covers it for the work plan. And we'll now move into a discussion on common legal issues that committee members need to be aware of.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Kristen Steinke. I'm a partner at Burke, Williams & Sorensen. I work with Johanna Canlis, who is your general counsel. She is general counsel for the Clean Energy Alliance. And you will become familiar with her, as well as Elizabeth Mitchell, who I work with very closely. And I am here today to present on common legal issues that you will run into as a member of the CAC. It's a very high-level overview of legal issues predominantly focused on the Brown Act. But I would encourage you to ask any questions at the end of my presentation. And then, of course, legal counsel is always available if you have any questions that come up from time to time throughout your tenure as a member of the CAC. So let's get started. As an introduction, we're going to be talking about the Brown Act, your Form 700 filing requirement, conflicts of interest, and like I said, a very high overview of those items. First of all, a basic primer in Brown Act items. Many of you are already familiar with the Brown Act. It's a transparency law, promotes transparency of government, ensuring that the public has access to all of the information that all of you have access to. And it puts together rules that require transparency for all members of public office. So the focus that I want to bring to you for the Brown Act is that you are part of a legislative body. So you are subject to the Brown Act and the rules that govern open meetings and transparency. So to begin with, when we talk about a Brown Act, a meeting that is subject to the Brown Act, which you will hear from time to time, is that it's any congregation of a majority of the members of the legislative body. In this case, you are a member of a 14-member body. So a quorum is eight of you. Meeting between a quorum of you at the same time and the same place to hear and discuss the business of the CEA at any time constitutes a meeting under the Brown Act. A meeting, we want to be clear that a meeting doesn't mean that you're in person with one another. It can be an email exchange, a text message exchange, it can be a social media post. So keep in mind that that when we're talking about a meeting, it could be any form of meeting. There are exceptions to the Brown Act and what constitutes a meeting, including individual contacts. For example, if you were to contact me, that would not constitute a meeting, even though we're talking about the business of the people. It's an individual contact, so you're not violating the Brown Act. Or if you are communicating with the executive director, you are not violating the Brown Act by doing that. Attendance at community meetings or meetings of other agencies is not considered a Brown Act violation. Meeting of ad hoc subcommittees is not a violation of the Brown Act, even if you do have a quorum present. That's important because today we are talking about ad hoc subcommittees. That is an exception under the Brown Act, and an ad hoc subcommittee is a committee that's put together for a specific purpose to talk about a specific matter, and it can constitute a quorum. And when that purpose is complete, the ad hoc committee is dissolved. And so it only has a limited purpose for a limited period of time. Also, conferences, your attendance at conferences or seminars is an exception. You could all attend the same conference and that would not be a Brown Act violation. Social or ceremonial gatherings, observance of advisory committee meetings. Those are all exceptions to the Brown Act. Now, Brown Act violations, which is more important, is when you have an informal meeting of a quorum, like I said. It could be an informal meeting via any type of technological device. And that could include serial meetings, which we often refer to as there are two types, a daisy chain meeting or a hub and spoke meeting. And so what I mean by that is a daisy chain meeting would be where you have one member communicating with another member who then talks to another member and another member. And it's almost like a game of telephone. But by the time you get through a quorum of the members, you have violated the Brown Act because that is not a noticed meeting and you are talking about the business of the people. So try to be conscientious about who you're talking to and who they might talk to after you. Also, the hub and spokes model is where you have one person who is communicating one message to all of the different members and communicating a point of view about the business of the people. That is a violation of the Brown Act. And it can take many forms. Like I said, you don't have to be in person for these communications. They can happen on social media. They can happen via text message. They can happen by telephone, email. So be conscientious of the communications that you have about the business of the people when you are talking to your fellow members. Also, something that's not widely talked about is discussion of items that are not agendized during a public meeting. We are all here today and we have an agenda that's been put together. It's been published 72 hours in advance of today's meeting. And the items that are on the agenda are the sole focus of today's meeting. If you were to have a discussion where the issues strayed away from those things that were on the agenda, you would be violating the Brown Act. And the reason is because you want to make sure that the public has advance notice of what you are going to be talking about in advance of the meeting itself. And if you don't give them notice of something that's not on the agenda, then you are depriving the public of the opportunity to participate if they want to. So that's why we want to stay focused on agendized items. And every once in a while, if conversations start to stray away from what's on the agenda, you'll hear somebody chime in, like myself or your executive director or the clerk saying, please focus on what's on the agenda if you get too far astray. Yeah.
Sorry, I just have a quick question on posting the agenda. So sometimes the agenda has attachments with it. If something in the agenda changes, like after it's been posted publicly, are we as an agency required to have like a second kind of alert, like, oh, by the way, public, this one item has changed, or how does that work?
There should be, if there's an amendment to the agenda after it's been posted, if it's in advance of the 72-hour deadline, it depends on what kind of amendment it is. You can't add an additional item, for example. But if you're supplementing what has already been agendized with perhaps an additional chart or additional data, that wouldn't necessitate an additional agenda or removing that item entirely. But you would post a supplemental agenda. So you would include an amendment. It would be posted as it's required to be outside of the clerk's office as well as online. And it would say supplemental agenda or amended agenda for the date of the hearing. Okay, so the Brown Act also controls how matters are agendized and the timing for those agendized items, which I don't need to get into in much specificity today, but I'm certainly available for questions if you want to talk about those rules. So I'm going to move on now to AB 992, which is I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick question. I noticed that we don't have a action to approve the agenda on the committee. Can you explain that? And then also if we wanted to have member announcements, or for instance, we have 3 new members here that I would like to have them introduce themselves. Couldn't we make an amendment at the beginning of the meeting, add that?
If there are changes to the agenda, yes, that would happen at the beginning of the meeting by a request from the members. And as a matter of policy, it would depend on the body and whether the agenda is approved or whether it's going to be amended by a member, for example. And in addition, if you want to have a moment where, the members give updates, that's a matter of policy, not necessarily controlled by the Brown Act or laws, but it certainly is something that other bodies do as a matter of course. And, typically at the end of the agenda, you'll go around and give updates on meetings attended on behalf of the CEA, for example. And that's something that we can discuss going forward. Yes.
How do items get added to the agenda?
Well, in this case, your executive director, in conjunction with the board, the full board of the CEA, would control what the CAC is considering, and what the full board wants back from the CAC. As a supportive body, you are advising the full board. And so most of the agendized items are going to come directly by way of direction from the board itself in conjunction with the executive director. Okay, any other questions before I move on?
Can I
Yes.
just make a comment? I know in the past, we've sometimes asked our CEO to add something to the next agenda. And that's an appropriate way of dealing with it too, right?
Or communicate directly with the executive director about items that you may want to see on the agenda.
Yes, that has been done, and typically what happens then is that I'll make an assessment as to how it falls under the work plan, and oftentimes those requests do. And so as long as it's directed by the board's work plan, it can be put on the agenda.
Thought I saw one other hand. Yeah, Mr. Dominguez.
Yes, with respect to public comment, it doesn't say on here, but sometimes public comment is about stuff that's not on the agenda. And so there may be a question raised or some issue. My assumption is it's okay for either someone from the committee or the commission to respond to the question, even though it's not on the agenda.
Typically what we see is when there is public comment at the very beginning of the meeting, like we asked if there was any public comment today and there was none. That's the opportunity for the public to appear and talk about anything that's not on the agenda. If they have comments about a specific agenda item, they should submit a speaker slip to speak on that specific item. But at the very beginning, it's their opportunity to speak about anything they'd like. Short comments back to the public is acceptable, but a discussion or a deeper dive into those items that are not agendized is not appropriate at the time because they are not on the agenda. So the appropriate action in that instance would be to ask for it to be agendized on a future or a future meeting, but not to discuss it at the meeting at which it is brought up and at the time. The public oftentimes doesn't understand that. So sometimes it's helpful to explain that and say, well, I'm sorry, we can't discuss that today. Thank you for your comments. We'll look into it or have staff contact you about your specific issue. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about comments from the committee on an item that's being introduced in public comments that's not on the agenda. Generally, when we have a script, if we had public comments, if we had a hot item and people wanted to come to this body to discuss it, but it wasn't on the agenda, we would read that script. You know, you have this much time, you know, if it's not on the agenda, we can't discuss it.
Right.
We do not engage on the boards that I'm on. So I just want some clarity on that. I understand saying, you know, we can refer that to staff from the chair possibly, or the vice chair.
I agree.
But I
It's
think
not
that get us in trouble.
Let me be clear. It's not a violation of the Brown Act to say, thank you for your comments and then direct staff or ask for an update from staff or to say, you know, we'll look into that in the future. Those short comments is what I'm talking about. And so no, to engage would be inappropriate because again, you don't want to talk about things that are not on the agenda.
Yeah, just to expand on that, it seems like the most appropriate things in most cases would be to refer it to staff if they want to make any comment on it, since they're not a part of the board.
If that's appropriate, yes. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's nothing that can be done and you just say, thank you for your comments and you move along. So it depends on what the comments are. Okay. So I'm going to move on now to AB 992 and the use of social media. This is a fairly recent law, at least as laws go. And it runs, we are in the middle of the period or just about to reach the end, and we'll see what the state legislature does about this once it expires on January 1st, 2026. But AB 992 addresses the use of social media amongst public officials. It prohibits a direct response by any public official to another public official's comment or post. And so if you are using social media, which I'm sure most of you are, if it was a perfect world for me, I would say don't use it at all. But I understand the need or the desire to use social media. But if you do see a post from one of your fellow CAC members, you are prohibited from replying directly to that post, which includes emojis or any other kind of response. And the legislation here is AB 992, and it prohibits that response. That is a violation of the Brown Act. There are no exceptions to that rule, and it applies to just one response, including, like I said, emojis, which is a thumbs up, a thumbs down, happy face, sad face, angry face, whatever it might be. And regardless of the social media platform, so Facebook, Instagram, any of the others that you may use, prohibits that direct response and deems it a discussion, especially if it's on, and again, this is only about the business of people. This isn't about your personal matters, all right? Your daughter just got married, you get a thumbs up from one of your CAC members, that's okay. That's not a Brown Act violation. But if you're talking about the business of the people on social media, the response is prohibited. So that's my high-level overview of the social media use. Remote teleconferencing has always been permitted under the Brown Act, but those remote teleconferencing rules are fairly strict. So if you need to call in and you know that you're going to be out of town, or you know that you're not going to be able to be here in person in advance of the meeting, then you can remote teleconference in under the traditional rules of the Brown Act, which would require you to publish or to post the agenda at the location in which you will be participating 72 hours in advance. That location must be open to the public. The public must be able to come there and comment or participate, which means it also has to comply with ADA accessibility rules. So a little bit more strict on the use of those traditional rules under the Brown Act. But if you are going to be out of town and you want to participate by teleconference, reach out to the clerk and we can, make sure that those matters are arranged in advance for you and that the agenda is made available at the location where you will be participating. We put on here emergency teleconferencing under AB 361. That was the legislation that was used during COVID to allow public entities to meet remotely entirely. Everybody was remote at that time. And I put that on there because it was the precursor to what is now applicable, which is AB 2449. These are the new remote teleconferencing rules, and they allow members of the body to participate remotely so long as there is a quorum that is meeting in person at the same place and the same time, and is available to a member if they are using the exceptions of just cause or emergency circumstances. We have one member today, for example, who's using AB 2449 to participate remotely because she was feeling ill. And she gave us a heads up. And so when she called in, she was able to still participate and use the benefits of AB 2449 so that she could still participate in this item. Lots of procedure here. So as soon as you know that you can't participate for an illness or because of care, please let us know so that we can properly agendize the item and make sure that everything is set up for you to participate. So now I'll cover what is just cause and what are emergency circumstances. Just cause includes the need to care for a dependent, a child, a parent, grandparent, or a contagious illness, the need related to a physical or mental disability. Say you break your arm and you can't participate, can't get here. That might be a cause to use for remote participation. Also, if you are on travel for official business of the CAC or the CEA or another public entity, then you can take advantage of that just cause exception. You just have to immediately identify the cause and the need for you to participate remotely. Let us know, let the clerk know as soon as possible, and we'll make sure that everything is set up for you so that you can participate remotely. Emergency circumstances speaks for itself. This is a physical or family medical emergency that prevents a member from attending in person. Because this body meets every other month, you are limited to 2 meetings per year that you can take advantage of the AB 2449 exception to participating in person. And like I said before, I'll breeze over this quickly. Let us know immediately. We have to agendize that and make sure everybody is aware of the fact that you won't be here in person. A description should be provided as to why you need to participate remotely. And then the legislative body should approve the request at the earliest opportunity. Okay, so moving back to violations of the Brown Act, it's not just lip service. There are serious consequences if you do violate the Brown Act. That includes invalidating or nullifying any decision that you may have made. There's potential for criminal sanctions, potential payment for attorney's fees and costs if the body is the subject of a challenge that is ultimately won, then you would be on the hook for those attorney's fees of the person who is challenging the action. And then, of course, shame. It's not good to be called out for violating the Brown Act. So we want to avoid that if we can. I'm gonna breeze through the Public Records Act. You are all subject to the Public Records Act for your communications and anything else dealing with the business of the CEA and the CAC. It's up here as the San Jose searches because there was a big case that came out of San Jose where there were staff members using their personal devices and personal platforms to do the city's business. So using text messages on their personal cell phones and things like that. And the court ruled that those communications, because they were the city's business, they dealt with the city's business, were subject to the Public Records Act, even though they were on private devices and private platforms. So if you use your private email account for the business of the CAC or the CEA, then that is subject to the Public Records Act. It does not apply to your personal communications, personal business done on your platforms, but it does apply to those communications that have to do with the business of the CAC. And if a Public Records Act request is received that seeks those communications, we would reach out to you and say, please provide us with the documents that you might have that are responsive to this request. And we would rely upon you to gather those and to provide them to us. PRA numbering, this is more of an important slide for lawyers, is there are different code sections that apply for the PRA these days. You are a Brown Act body and you are public officials, so you do have to file your Form 700. I'm sure you all have received those communications. If on an annual basis, those are required. For returning members, it's by April 1st. For incoming members, it should be within 30 days of taking office. Yes.
So I have a question. I've looked at the Form 700.
Yeah.
Schedule A talks about stocks. So typically you're disclosing any financial interest that you may have in the area
Yes.
that you serve. However, when you're talking about stocks, they're really general stocks. Everybody does business in this region. So does one not disclose those? Because, for example, New York Times or a Starbucks are examples because they do business in the area, but really our ownership of that stock is so insignificant that it would have no implications.
I'm going to give you a very lawyerly response, which is it depends. But I would look at their very thorough instructions on those Form 700s that would give you more information about what stocks or investments are necessary to report, whether it's a mutual fund or something else. It may be different depending on what your investments are. In addition, I would say that the FPPC website has excellent resources on those questions that are more specific. So you could dig into the specific question. And if that doesn't answer your question, then I would encourage you to reach out separately.
Okay, thank you.
So conflicts of interest. Oh, I think the person online has. Dolores. Dolores, you're muted.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know if you want to keep on discussing the conflicts of interest, because I had a question about the social media policy.
Oh, sure. Go
Did
ahead.
we
I can
discuss,
talk about that.
I think my understanding was that, or at a previous CAC meeting, I think Elizabeth informed us that we can't really respond to even, a neighbor or someone on social media about CAC issues. But what you were talking about was really related to us corresponding on social media with other CAC members or other legislators, or that kind of thing. Has the policy changed in terms of our ability to engage with neighbors or friends or people on social media who have questions about CEA? Because I think it really does hamper our ability to play a role in promoting and advocating for CEA when we have that kind of restriction in terms of social media.
Well, I would encourage you to talk to constituents. I think that's important. However, I think when you use social media, it is filled with traps for the unwary,
Yes.
particularly when you have somebody asking you a question in an open forum about a CAC issue or a CEA issue, and you respond directly. And there's a long thread of comments in between the comment that you provided and the initial comment by the neighbor, where one of your members, your fellow members, may not have seen that initial comment from you. And so, like I said, there are traps.
Yes.
And so and as I started, I said, I would encourage you not to use social media at all. But I think that is the gist of it, is that you could be violating the Brown Act and not even realize that you are by communicating directly with a neighbor in an open forum. I I certainly think there's nothing wrong with you emailing directly or direct messaging a constituent. But keep in mind that is subject to the Public Records Act. And so if you are communicating about those issues, you would be subject to producing all of those communications if there is a request.
And I think Elizabeth also said, though, that we would be restricted by, like let's say someone said, okay, Dolores, you can handle Nextdoor. I would be the only person from CAC that would interact with non-CEA people on Nextdoor, that we'd have to make that kind of a division of labor. And then someone else could do Facebook or whatever. And I don't even know whether we want to go there. I have a lot of experience in this area, but I don't know whether we want to go there. And I just want to make sure that, what the path forward is, because I do think we are hampered in terms of, I'm not crazy about social media myself, but I've had to be on it, and I understand how important it is really to promote organizations and collaborate with others to promote organizations on social media.
Well, I think there's a difference between promoting your organization and engaging in a dialogue with somebody on an open forum. And if you do see a question that's posed in an open forum and you'd like to discuss that with the person, I don't think there's anything wrong with you saying, please contact me directly. And then if there's a message that as a body you decide you want to push out, that would be organized with staff. I don't know of any policy where one person has taken Nextdoor and the other person has taken Facebook, for example. And I'm not sure that's something that we're going to address today.
Okay.
But maybe a separate conversation with staff would be appropriate on that one.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
So I know this came up and it's been a pretty thorough discussion when we were bringing communities on. And
Mhm.
on Nextdoor in particular, because it's a community forum, not as much social media
Yeah.
driven as much as community forum driven.
Right.
So, I think we left it where we would not engage on that platform. But that platform, I think if you receive information on that platform or you see it, it's a really great thing to give staff that feedback without engaging. So there's some benefit from having a presence, just the engagement part is where I think we get tripped up.
Yeah, and certainly CEA is going to push out a message. That's, don't worry about that. This is a staff level issue that will be taken care of. If you come across comments that you want to share with staff, I would encourage you to do that as well. Staff is not fully employed to monitor social media at all times. So you all will be exposed to things that staff will not. So it's helpful to receive that information from you all from time to time if it becomes necessary.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to interject there. I appreciate those comments. I would strongly encourage you, as was just suggested, if you have something that somebody asks you a question, to take it offline and interact with that person personally. But if you see something posted, by all means, forward it to us. If it's something that's of concern that you individually want clarification on, we do track social media. Our consultant for marketing tracks all social media platforms and frequently forwards us comments on Nextdoor and other social media platforms. And what we'll often do is we'll assess, how limited and how broad, if this is limited to 3 people chattering amongst each other, we may lower that priority. But what we'll sometimes do is prepare a response in a general way that will come from a member of our board or from staff in a social media post, rather than a direct response to any topics that come up. So I would highly encourage everyone to pass that along to me or to our staff so that we can take it there, because we do that routinely with Trepepi Smith.
Okay, this is not your AB 1234 training, so I'm going to move quickly. Conflicts of interest are based in your financial investments, your financial holdings, where you receive money, your employer, where you are employed, real property you may own, investments. And that is really the source for any conflicts of interest that are going to arise. There are also conflicts that may arise from contracts that the public entity is entering into. And there can be what we call a common law conflict of interest, where you, as the member of the body, determine that you have a bias that would not allow you to make a fair and impartial decision. That's an analysis that you do on your own, as are financial conflicts of interest. I don't know what all of your conflicts are, and so it's important for you to pay attention to the item that's on the agenda, identify if you might have a conflict, and if necessary, reach out to legal counsel. Conflicts of interest are complicated and can be complex analyses. And so the sooner you identify those conflicts of interest, the better, and we're here to help you. So reach out if you have a question in advance of the meeting. It is very challenging to be sitting in the middle of a meeting and receive a conflicts of interest question at the dais. So your courtesy is appreciated. And with that, if you do have a conflict of interest, you should disqualify yourself from the item on the agenda for which you have a conflict. That would require you to state for the record what your conflict is, and then say, I am disqualifying myself from this item, and you must leave the room during the discussion of that item, and you will be called to return once the discussion on that item and that item is complete. And that's it. You do have a requirement for the AB 1234 training, like I said, and this is not it. So this is just again, a high level overview for you, kind of flag some key issues going forward. There is a free FPPC training for AB 1234 ethics that I would encourage you to look into if you have not done that. You must do AB 1234 training every other year. And so if you haven't done it or you can't remember when you did it last, I would encourage you to do it. It's always a good refresher and has a lot of great information. So that is the end of my presentation, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you very much. Our next item is item number 3, Chief Executive Officer update.
Thank you. So just a brief update on our recent enrollments of Oceanside and Vista. There you see the statistics through the current time, I think last month. And as you can see, the eligible customers are up to 111,500 roughly. And our participation rate with an opt-out of 5,800 or so opt-outs is 94.8%. And you can see them, the opt-ups to 100%. Vista has 271, again, as a reminder, mostly by virtue of their municipal accounts having opted up to 100% green impact. Here you see the breakdown of customers by city, member agency, and by product offering, 50% renewable, 75% carbon free, and the green impact renewable product. And as a reminder, the cities of Vista, Solana Beach, and Del Mar have opted up their municipal accounts. And I would report at this point that we are engaged with the city of Carlsbad's sustainability staff, who is currently looking at the opting up of their municipal accounts to 100% by virtue of their updated climate action plan. We've still been actively engaged. Is there a question? Yeah, our staff was took part in the Carlsbad Unified School District. The comment, I don't know if that was recorded, but it was a comment about the Carlsbad Unified School District also opting up to green impact by April of this year. Apologies. As I mentioned, we are still actively involved in community outreach. There's some couple of the events that we attended in January. And moving forward, we have events that we are going to be participating in. These are just some of them. And again, really trying to stay active in the community to ask questions and provide information to people and folks out in the community. And we found it's very effective to participate in these events. An update on our Solar Plus program. We now have 12 active and 4 complete contracts as of January 22nd of this year. You can see the breakdown there by our member agencies, and still actively rolling this program out. One update here is that in November of last year, the board expanded this program in a number of areas. Primarily, we expanded the program to what we call our channel partners. Those are other contractors outside of other more Tesla-specific contractors. And one of the things that this does is it allows a wider range of people to be available to our customers to install these facilities. Also, which is a topic that came up in the Community Advisory Committee, expands to other roof types. I didn't put this in the slide, but it also expands to other languages. So we have contractors that are Spanish-speaking contractors that will come on board. And so that opens up the opportunity to others. The other portion that the board approved was expanding into the Carefera customers who might want to take advantage of this. And we would facilitate the application of self-generation incentive program funds for these customers that can cover up to 85% of the cost of these facilities. So a really dramatically reduced rate for these Carefera customers. We still have to make application on behalf of the customers for those funds. but it is a program that we're excited to see if we can get some folks from those that customer class enrolled. Just a brief regulatory, yes.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with that program. Where would I find information on the Solar Plus program? Would it
Yeah,
be on the website?
It
or-
is on our website. It's under, go to the website, it's under programs, and
Okay.
you'll see Solar Plus. And it's a program under which applicants with single-family home occupants can be provided with a solar system and battery, storage battery, with no upfront costs at a reduced rate, and over which they, over time, they pay for that with the rate. The maintenance is provided by the contractor, and so there's an agreement that provides for that. One of the things I didn't add to the slide, and I've just been just kind of thought of, is that the program, as originally conceived, had the reduced rate for the solar panels and then a monthly cost for the power wall of $115 per month. The base rate was 14.5 cents per kilowatt hour. With feedback from our customers and other people we talked to, one of the things the board did to modify the program in November was to incorporate into a blended rate the total cost of the system, including the battery. So you didn't have that $115 per month, or wouldn't have that $115 per month charge. Rather, that's rolled into a slightly higher. I think the base rate is somewhere around 22 cents per kilowatt hour. So you can opt to pay for the battery and the system at a fixed rate over time. So that is the way the program works. And then there's, under the terms of the contract, there are buyout provisions that customers can buy the system over after a period of time. And the amendments I just went through are expanding that program.
Craig,
Yes,
I thought you had mentioned that you were expanding this into the commercial sector. Is that right?
that's coming up in a second.
Okay.
Actually, it isn't coming. I'm sorry. It is, I'm thinking of the battery only program. We are looking at a C&I, commercial and industrial component of this program that we will be rolling out and issuing an RFP for. Yes. So just an update on regulatory legislative procedures. It's the legislative cycle is well underway. On the legislative side, state legislators have until February 21st to introduce bills to be considered for voting, being put into committees, and then making their way up through the legislative process. As such, Cal CCA, which is our trade organization that represents CCAs throughout the state, puts together an annual lobby day to go up to Sacramento, and all the CCAs and members of the boards participate in this event. Myself and our regulatory analyst, Emily Fabic, went up to that lobby day and met with our local elected officials, as well as in groups of other CCA directors, met with members of key committees, including the Energy Committee, members of the governor's staff, and others, to talk about our priorities. Number one, front and center, is affordability on the energy side. That was widely repeated. I will say that unfortunately, some of the hot topics right now, no pun intended, are the fires, not only in Los Angeles, in Pacific Palisades and Altadena, and Castaic Lake and others. But some of the discussion revolving around battery storage, fires, with the Moss Landing fire having been pretty recent. So that kind of has been, it's sort of that topic of the day. But affordability on the legislative side is really front and center. You may have seen that Senator Padilla, who a group of us, including myself, met with CCA, Cal CCA and CCA directors throughout the state. He just pushed forward two bills, SB 330 and SB 331, both of which are seeking to, SB 330 is to set up a pilot project for streamlined projects for infrastructure enhancements. The state of California has very many lines of outdated infrastructure. One of the challenges we've had with renewable energy over the last several years is there's a backlog of projects up in the Northern California trying to get approval through the process. It's a very lengthy process. So SB 331 seeks to streamline that process to get projects, infrastructure enhancements and improvements so that we can get a lot of these renewable projects into the ground and generating electricity. So that's a real sort of front and center of in the minds of a lot of the legislators, and something we pushed forward as a group in Sacramento last month. Yes.
Who is the Assembly Energy Committee Chair?
That is Cotty Petrie Norris out of Orange County. And we did meet with her, and she was very open to our concerns. Now, she's been a little bit sidetracked by fire issues given where she's located, but she's very interested in and has listened to us and had good questions. And so we think she'll be somebody we can work with to get some legislation moving through on affordability.
Did you have any discussions over the federal discussions on solar? I mean, not solar, but wind. Wind.
Well, we didn't have specific discussions on wind. I think there's a general sort of disclaimer that was presented to us whenever we met with an elected official about the how should I frame this? The questions at the national level about funding. The governor's office was very pointed in saying that funding programs that had any federal money were on hold because they just can't, the state itself can't backstop any funding that they would authorize or allocate. They just don't have it in the budget. And so there is a pause on many efforts that are going forward. Some CCAs have actually lost funding on certain projects. So that was, I appreciate you bringing it up because that was another undercurrent of the whole day, that there is some uncertainty, quite a bit of uncertainty about some of these funding sources. So something to keep an eye on.
One quick follow-up. Do you have federal advocacy on the agenda for?
Well, it's interesting you brought that up. We had our board of directors, Cal CCA board of directors met this morning, and we do not CEA does not have a lobbyist in a federal lobbyist. We are seeking the services of a state lobbyist as directed by the board last month. But many CCAs do, and they are bringing forward topics of that nature to our our federally elected officials, Senate and Assembly.
Craig, over here.
Yes.
Was there any discussion in terms of streamlining to work more on local distributed systems as opposed to those mega ones that require transmission lines from hundreds of miles away?
There wasn't any specific discussion at Sacramento. I think that's always just sort of a given with CCAs, that's part of our platform is to prioritize local projects. I think where the topic did come under discussion and something that we've been working on for a long time is local resource adequacy. More specifically, how the market for resource adequacy has, in our view, become artificially inflated because of the slice of day framework. And it's a very wonky topic, but we're required to have additional reserve margins for energy on an hourly basis throughout the day. And right now, if we have sufficient resources in a given hour that exceed what we need and are short in a different hour, and our, let's say, SDCP has the opposite, we cannot trade those resources. We have to go out and procure them again. And so what you end up with is across the state, a doubling of these resources. We don't have the market to make up in these hours where we're deficient or long. So that was a hot topic, and local RA is a big part of that. And so There wasn't any specific discussion about local projects per se and microgrids and distributed energy, but that's always a sort of a underlying tenet of our operations, and all CCAs look to do those projects.
Sorry, I have to just step out for a few minutes and I'll be right back.
So we have issued a request for proposals for a battery retrofit program. Again, another topic that was brought up in the Community Advisory Committee last year in terms of customers that are out there, many customers that are out there that have solar systems, but at the time did not put in a power wall or a battery system. So we have solicited proposals for this program. Would allow customers to store excess storage or battery or energy rather for use during peak demands, could provide backup power during a power shutoff or any kind of outage, provide savings to our customers to reduce peak demand electricity use, rather relying on the battery for that, and also reduce delivery costs for the same reason. And then make energy storage more available and affordable. They're not inexpensive items to add to your system. And so we're looking at a program where we can provide some benefit to our customers and provide this battery-only program. We received 4 proposals. We're currently vetting those proposals with our staff, and again, it is designed for residential customers. For existing solar systems. And again, we're looking at ways to make this available, affordable, and provide benefit not just to the customer, but to CEA as well, reducing demand on the grid and enhancing grid reliability. Our partner agency to the south, SDCP, had a similar program and it was highly enrolled. So we look to hopefully have a really responsive program for our customers.
Greg, can I ask you a question? When you say affordable, does that mean CEA is subsidizing those, or is it done some other way?
We haven't decided that yet. The proposals will propose how they expect to do that, and then we'll look at what the proposals are saying and decide if there is program money that we can have the board take to the board to recommend support for. So we haven't quite decided that, but that could be a part of the program. This is the timeline of that battery retrofit program. As you can see, we're looking to go to the board in March to have a selected or preferred provider and the program framework set up. Another project and program we've been working on is the Equitable Building Decarbonization Direct Install Program. The Southern California region was awarded $329 million for 6 Southern California counties for the period of 2024 to 2029. We are a part of that. San Diego County has been allocated about $1.3 million for the partners, including CEA. It does not include budget for implementers or project budgets, but we will be able to provide assisting with program marketing, program design and support, community education and training, and participant recruitment. These are going to be programs for communities of concern, providing decarbonization, energy efficiency programs for residents and customers in our region. I don't have a slide for it, but on a similar track, we're working with STCP and the county on their San Diego Regional Energy Network that will also provide energy efficiency programs and options for customers throughout the county, including CEA. So that concludes that part of the report, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Yeah, I was going to say, turn your mic on. You got it?
I put my icon. Okay. Silicon Valley in the Bay Area has a program for years now, which I thought would be great for this battery thing, is this interest-free loans for people to purchase the batteries. So that would be a great project, I think, for people who want to upgrade either, with the battery. I need a battery and I have solar. But
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very. I got it back on. There we go. Yeah.
Are there specific programs for renters and people in multi-tenant housing?
That's an excellent question. Thank you for the question. We do not currently have, but we are looking at ways to do that. We're looking particularly when we start with our commercial, our CNI solar battery program, we're looking at ways to modify it for multifamily. We've asked our current provider, Participate Energy, who's running our Solar Plus program with us, if there are ways to provide these systems for multifamily and renters. And so it's something that has come up already in this committee as well as at the board to see how they can do that. It can be very challenging, particularly as multifamily oftentimes has a master meter. Sometimes they have sub panels and it's just and really limited commercial or community area for these things. So we are looking at that, but at this point we don't have a program for that.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Is there any effort to introduce or and support balcony solar?
Again, we don't have a specific program for that, but that is something, a technology that we have seen. And again, we're looking at ways we can provide multifamily benefit. And we have seen those systems. There are plug and play, essentially, systems that you can install. And so we're looking at a wide variety of different options for multifamily. And that would be one of them, potentially.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, Micah?
Yes. Okay, so there are lots of programs are expanding. That's pretty exciting. My little concern is the financial side. I still understand we have some debt, unfortunately. So how you are going to balance it, expanding a program at the same time, reducing that, our JP Morgan?
Thank you for the question. Yes, obviously fiscal sustainability, which you'll see in the draft strategic plan, is a vital principle and objective of ours. Happy to report we're also planning a mid-year budget update to our board at this month's board meeting. Our net position is over budget at the end of December. We're at about, I'm trying to remember offhand, somewhere about a $43 million to the good on our net position at the end of December. We're projecting to finish the fiscal year, recalling that we started at a negative net position at the end of last year at about $20 to $24 million to the good. So we are in a position of stability. Our debt right now, we still have a line of credit with JP Morgan. We're still compliant with all our covenants for that line of credit. And the only outstanding amount actively right now is $3.75 million out of the $40 million. There are going to be instances during months between now and June where we'll have to potentially dip into some of that, but we would typically repay it right away. So our financial standing right now is solid. We're beginning conversations with JP Morgan to discuss extending that line of credit. Right now, the line of credit expires in January of 2026. And so we're looking at ways, we'll basically engage with them right in the next month or two to talk about what it might look like to extend it beyond that time, which is not unusual for CCAs, particularly young CCAs like ours. But in terms of the cost implications, we are limited in our program budget. Last year we had 600,000 budgeted for programs. I will say it's been unallocated. And this year we've gone up to, I believe, 800,000 in our budget, again, unallocated. So we do have some program funds. And just to remind this committee that our JPA provides that program funds be allocated to our member agencies based on the load. So if your city has a high load, we proportion the benefit, the program funds based on that load. So that is why we're being very judicious about how and where we might recommend those funds be allocated. But again, battery only program could be one of those places, but we do have money budgeted, and our financial standing right now is firm and improving.
All right. Okay, with that, we will move on to item number 4. This is review of the draft CEA strategic plan. Are you doing that as well?
I'm doing that as well, yes. So thank you, Chair and members of the committee. This is a draft strategic plan. I'd like to thank our staff and some of our consultant team who helped us put this together. It's for your consideration. We did take the draft to the board at our first meeting of the year to let them know what we're working on, and I'll give you a high overview of some of the input we received there at the end of this. This would be for the period of fiscal year 25 to 27. And it's to look at finding strategic principles and core principles for CEA through the fiscal year 26, 27. The strategic plan, as I mentioned, it was a labor of staff and other consultants to look at, to gather background information on our goals, our various formation documents, look at what our goals are for the JPA agreement, and to formalize those into guiding principles, goals, and a mission statement, and from this strategic plan to inform a work plan for consideration at a future date. This is just an overview of the timeline. Began reviewing the documents last fall and brings us to January when we presented the first draft to the board. And now we're here before you to get your input on this first draft. We look to have this finalized and sent to the board in March with incorporation of our key performance indicators and work plan in May and June, aligning with the budget cycle. So looking at the foundation of this document, we'll go to the core guiding principles, mission statement, strategic objectives, and the work plan. That's the basic framework of this strategic plan. So in reviewing our JPA agreement, these are just some of the high-level goals that are called out and already approved, that we want to have competitive rates with our incumbent IOU and to target a rate benefit of 2% below their generation rate, to achieve and sustain the climate action plan goals of our member agencies, to lower greenhouse gas emissions and consistently be lower on an annual basis than SDG&E, and to have an energy portfolio that incorporates energy efficiency and demand response programs. On this slide, we show our renewable portfolio standard goal, which is to achieve 100% renewable by 2035, no later than 2035, to have a base power supply of 50% renewable, and at no point have a lower percentage of renewable than SDG&E. And then, as I mentioned, to provide discretionary revenues subject to our policies of allocation for programs. Some of the current activities that achieve these objectives that we've been engaged in, as I just went over. We've completed our phase 4 expansion. We are still enrolling net energy metering customers through approximately May of this year. We've been implementing board-approved programs to benefit customers, pursuing long-term renewable energy contracts or power purchase agreements, and meeting our regulatory obligations, participating in regional efforts to provide energy efficiency programs to all customers. And I mentioned both the equitable decarbonization grant program as well as the San Diego Regional Energy Network, and then actively engaging in regulatory and legislative proceedings on behalf of our customers. So the guiding principles that we developed there are 6 of them to promote use and development of clean energy. And again, identifying that 100% renewable target by 2035. The build and maintain financial sustainability, I just alluded to that earlier. Provide beneficial customer programs, actively engage in customer advocacy, provide exceptional customer service and community engagement, and to promote organizational development. So we thought, having had a mission statement, we started asking ourselves through this process, what do we do? What are we good at? Who are our customers, and what is our value add to our customers, and what makes us unique? And developed a mission statement that had the support of the board to empower communities with the choice of sustainable and affordable energy for all customers, fostering local economic growth, environmental responsibility, inclusion, and community well-being. So that is the draft at this point, and obviously welcome to input from you all. So our strategic objectives for each of the guiding principles we developed. Under the promote use and development of clean energy, again, reiterating our goal of achieving 100% renewable by 2035, highlighting customers that opted up to our green impact 100% product, supporting customer access to grant-funded and or ratepayer-funded energy efficiency programs, and to, as was brought up by our vice chair, pursue local generation projects. On our second guiding principle, to build and maintain financial stability, we would like to achieve sufficient financial reserves to support rate stability, to achieve an investment-grade credit rating, to analyze and adjust the rate premiums for the Clean Impact Plus and Green Impact energy products to ensure appropriate cost recovery, to offer competitive rates while maintaining financial stability, to reduce costs by reducing peak load through energy demand management programs. Just want to take a second here just to point out that that we will be bringing forward a discussion to this committee as well as to the board this year, relatively soon, on the Green Impact rate premium and whether or not it's providing sufficient, the premium is enough to cover the cost of that product. So that will be coming forward. The same would be true of our Clean Impact Plus product. That's the 75% default product. So that conversation is going to come forward to both you and the board, as you've seen in your work plan. And then on the competitive rates front, the SDG&E has published its final ERA forecast and PCIA rates. They went into effect on February 1st. They were modified in November, and then again, they asked for a delay. They were supposed to be in place on January 1st. They requested the PUC extend their time frame to February 1st, and during that intervening time, provided updated PCIAs. So the good news from the November PCIAs were that every PCIA for every member agency, remembering there's 4 different vintages, all were negative. The update in February, unfortunately, otherwise they became less negative. So by that, I mean, if you have a negative PCIA, there's effectively a credit for departed load or unbundled customers, which CEA customers are. But that negative PCIA, when combined with our generation rates for the winter rates are, when you look at an average residential customer, are now lower overall than SDG&E's generation rate, except for one city, and that is the 2017 vintage or Solana Beach. But that is basically on parity now with SDG&E. So that's through the winter rate. So I just wanted to point that out.
Greg, before you go on, can I just ask, I know some of the IOUs offer their customers a way of kind of flattening out their bills over the peak seasons. Do we offer anything like that?
We don't offer a program like that, but we, by virtue of our rates that we approved in June last year, we did attempt to flatten those rates out a bit by leveling them out. But I guess one way we do that is the Solar Plus program. I know that's limited, but that does effectively offer a flat rate across the whole year. So guiding principle 3, provide beneficial customer programs. We want to provide our customers with access to programs that help reduce their energy use and their bills. To provide, again, access to solar and battery storage to as many segments of the community as we can, including multifamily. Expand solar access to solar and battery systems for our communities of concern, our lower income residents. Encourage participation in state-funded income-based assistance programs. Again, that's where we've expanded the Solar Plus, and hopefully we'll take advantage of the SCHIP funding. Identify and design energy programs for government agencies, which we're actively working on, and then to collaborate with other, to expand out programs to all our CEA customers with other agencies. On the engagement in customer advocacy, my apologies. Talked a little bit about this in the CEO report. We want to maintain, and we do maintain, active participation in the regulatory and legislative proceedings that are going on at the state. Actively advocate for CEA and its customers, primarily in the areas of affordability, renewable energy procurement, and local control. Monitor and advocate for fair and reasonable charges, and then engage with local elected officials to communicate our benefits as well as influence legislative decisions. And then this is a key one, to provide exceptional service and community engagement. I'm going to paraphrase all of this to say that we're actively involved in community engagement on a consistent basis in North County, and we continue to engage with our customers. Our staff is always happy to talk to any customer that has a question or a concern, and we actively do that, and to develop a really comprehensive customer communication strategy to provide outreach into all our communities. The final one, promoting organizational development. We have a small but very dedicated team that has been working throughout the last year to advance these programs and get engaged in the community as well as in legislative and regulatory affairs. The board at its last meeting approved or authorized the creation of 6 positions, 4 of which we are immediately going to recruit for. 2 to support our energy procurement activities and data analysis, market analysis, and 2 to support our customer programs, customer service, and key accounts. So we're working on those right now. I like to say that we have done this year a lot with a little, but I'm really encouraged by the team and their ability to work to advance our goals collectively. So the next step are to finalize this work plan, or sorry, this strategic plan, develop a staffing and budget plan, and to inform a work plan through the completion of this draft plan. I mentioned at the outset that we did get a first blush of the strategic plan from our board last month. These are very high level, high level comments from the board, pardon the typo, that this strategic plan from their perspective really aligns well with what the board has already directed, particularly areas of customer advocacy. They'd like us to distill this down into bite-sized pieces so that we can really set out to implement this strategic plan, and to emphasize communication on social media, community outreach, particularly with people of the community who might not otherwise be engaged on matters regarding electricity and energy, and maybe harder to reach. And then to make the draft plan available online for people to comment on if they so choose. So that concludes the report, and happy to answer any questions and take input.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pardon my newness here, but I'm trying to read between the lines. Is there an effort to deploy virtual power plants to manage microgrids at customer sites, and to coordinate multiple customer microgrids and the associated financing?
The short answer, thank you for the question, is yes. We just characterize these under local distribution. Virtual power plants are, again, something that each CCA is taking seriously, and effectively our Solar Plus program can operate in that manner as a virtual power plant at your own home. But we are working on those things from a broader concept, primarily with respect to expanding our battery solar program to commercial and industrial users, as well as our government agency, member agencies, and government property.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
I have some.
Oh, sorry,
I have
Dolores.
some. Okay, I have some just comments, and just things that you may or may not want to consider.
One moment, please, Dolores.
Okay.
I'm sorry to
right.
interject. I just wanted to note for the record that there are no public comments on this particular item. And Mr. Davenport has brought some written thoughts, which he has distributed to the board. And those written thoughts are available for the public to review with the clerk as well. Thank you. Sorry for my late interjection.
Okay, yeah, I wonder, that's a good idea. I mean, I would be happy to circulate. Well, I don't know that it would be necessary if I can just go through them right now. Under the core guiding principles, first of all, I think the plan looks good, very good. And I just, going back to the beginning for us, when what were the reasons we really thought CCAs were necessary? And one of them was really increasing the transition to clean energy. And so from that vantage point, I'm just, wondering, maybe that should be point number one, accelerate our transition to clean energy. Anyway, just a possibility. I can see that you do want the development of clean energy in there too, for obvious reasons. And then number 3 for core guiding principles, I just thought in the last second to the last line there, you could have promote renewable energy, affordability, and just make that minor change. And then on background foundational guidance, I wasn't sure what 2025 channel side was, but I think now maybe that's a reference to Solar Plus.
Actually, I can respond to that unless you wanted me to wait till you're done.
Okay, well, I can I'll go through, yeah. And then for the mission statement, I actually like the second one, but I would make, again, just some very minor edits. Again, for you to totally ignore or accept. Clean Energy Alliance is committed to empowering local communities by providing accessible, sustainable, and cost-effective energy choices and programs, enabling individuals and businesses to actively participate in accelerating our transition to clean energy. Just a consideration. I mean, I think the second one is just kind of generic, and it really doesn't reflect some of the specifics to the extent that the first one does. So that would be my feedback on that. Under guiding principles, let's see here, sorry. For number 3, I just would add on that first line, after the needs of our customers, promote the adoption of clean energy, affordability, etc. So just an insert there. And then let me see, under customer programs, too, there is a typo, customer, in the last, in D, and it's not spelled right. I hope this is the most recent draft, but if it isn't, my apologies. And then for 6, I just thought, since the organization's already been created, continue to develop, or you could say nurture, an organization that fosters employee creativity, blah, blah, etc. Objectives for A, I thought you might start off with key operational processes as upon effective operational processes, just so that, it's clear that you're looking at the most effective processes that are going to get you to where you want to go. In the last C objective, instead of encourage employee participation, blah, 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 I have promote employee growth by encouraging participation in, etc. That just, again, these are really minor suggestions and for your consideration. Number 3, under next steps, indicators is spelled incorrectly. I think that's it. Oh, okay. One last thing. I'm sorry. One last thing. For number 5, just under objectives, and this is customer service and community engagement. I think you need a comma after, for B, the second one, you need a comma after North County. And then you could add, instead of adding value to the community and the environment. And then for C, I just would suggest maybe, instead of saying engage with CEA customers to provide information, engage with CEA customers to increase awareness of CEA's programs. So just that minor change. And then customer looks like that's misspelled in under D, the last one. Okay, so
Member Jameson, before our executive director responds, can you provide staff with that list of edits in writing, or have you already done so?
I haven't done that, and I will.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that.
I think that it would be important for them to be able to follow some of the recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I realize that. I'm happy to do that.
Okay. I'm going to call on Greg Wade to respond, and then we have some additional questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And to respond to the question about channel side is the desalination plant account that was brought on as of January 1st of this year. It's a really large load of energy-wise. It represents about 10% of CEA's total load. And for that reason, we had to set up a wholesale access tariff for large
Mhm.
companies like that. And took the better part of the year to get that all worked out, what the tariff would be. And happy to say they're enrolled and actively part of CEA now as of January 1st. That's what channel side refers to. And they're separately, not only are they separately accounted for, but from a scheduling of the energy needs up in CAISO, they're separately scheduled and separately accounted for.
Mhm. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, and so Member Daniels?
Last year, we talked about putting pilot programs of microgrids on people's property. I don't know whatever happened to that program. It was rolled out at the same time as the Solar Plus program was, and they were going to do that, and people were going to volunteer their property so they could put microgrids on there, and we can start decentralizing. That's what we really want to do. We don't want to have 400 miles away getting our wind from, El Centro. We don't want that kind of stuff. So we really want things decentralized. And in the programs, you were talking about $100 incentive per household, I guess. But since I was so actively involved in the Carlsbad Unified School District decision, talking to them every single month for a year, and then getting a new person elected, Allison Emery, so we had the 3 votes to get this done. They have stated that it's a 2% increase in their bill, and their bill is like $40 million. Okay, or something like that. And this 2% increase, they would really like to have some kind of incentive in April to do that. That'd be wonderful. There are 13 schools, but SDG&E has 4 or 5 or 10 or 15 meters at every school. So we don't want to give it to every meter, but we could give it to each of the schools. And I think it would really be nice to do that to Carlsbad Unified School District because they've worked so well with me. Thank you.
And, okay, I'm going to introduce our new member, Danielle Dominguez from Oceanside.
Well, thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation. I just have a couple of requests and not so much a question, but a comment on the one of the slides. The first request is the slide presentation on the Brown Act. Is that available to us offline? Can we get a copy, or is it available on the webpage? And 2 is the strategic plan presentation. Also, is that available on the webpage, or can we get a copy of it?
I'll start with Brown Act slides. I'm happy to distribute a copy of those to the members.
Perfect. And
yes, the same, we'll make a copy of the strategic plan available. It's the copy that I'm not sure which copy that is being used by others, but we have updated it slightly and we'll make that available.
Excellent.
Oh, I would add too that the clerk's office just informed me that they will be available online as well. The slides are available online.
For the Brown Act?
Yes.
No, okay, perfect. On the a couple of things was I was looking at well, some brief history. So way back when they created the CEAs, I remember sitting in a room with some lobbyists, and the question was, what is a CEA, or what they were called CCAs at that time? That's what the legislation was. And I had a question. I said, well, are we creating another like utility middleman in the mix? And I said that because at the time, utility executives were paid a certain multiple of the lowest worker. And then 20 years later, now that multiple has an exponent on it. So with respect to some of the expenditures for requests for additional staffing, I would just recommend that, we have some tie with the workers or the staff as opposed to the executives, where they don't wind up like a Pedro Pizarro or the PG&E guy making $20 million while the worker makes 100,000. The other piece is the communication. I worked in the utility business for almost 4 decades, and I have trouble trying to decipher a bill from SDG&E. I mean, it's complicated. And so I also am a member of a commission for Oceanside, Rent Control Commission for the mobile home parks, all 17 parks. And these are all usually low income people in the lower economic rungs or the lower rungs of the economic ladder. And so, and a lot of them don't have computers. A lot of them have language barriers. So any communication about some of these programs, I know that there's a Spanish component to it, but we should expand because Oceanside has a big Filipino community, Samoan community. So that may be more emphasis on multi-language explanations and people that will work with some of these communities to help understand the bills. The other piece is I've learned that the residents of the mobile home parks are a lot of seniors, a lot of retired vets. A lot of them either don't have computers or have trouble working their computer. So hopefully some of the outreach we use is not just social media or something on computers, that more effort is made for either community engagement. As I said, I'm on this commission for the mobile home parks or 17 parks. I mean, if there, I would recommend that I know some of the organizations, the HOAs in these parks, to set up meetings with some of these organizations and the residents of the park, explaining the CEA, maybe explaining how their bill works. And lastly, I was looking at the growth prospects, and I remember back at that meeting 20 some odd years ago, what was explained to me was the CCAs are kind of like the Costco or Walmart principle, where the more power, the more customers you have, the better deal you can get from the power producers who are selling the power. And so I'm curious about the growth prospects of CEA. Are we maxed out on cities, or is there further outreach to bring more cities into the fold? Because the more customers we have, the better deals we can get from these power producers. Sorry about all the questions lumped in.
Thank you for those comments and the question. Just to get to the last question, as far as growth or expansion, there are opportunities. Ideally, we'd want to limit our expansions or our member agencies to SDG&E territories. We don't have to, but that makes some sense. And there are several cities in Southern Orange County that are part of the SDG&E service territory, including San Clemente and Dana Point and Laguna Niguel, I believe. We don't have any current plans right now to expand. We've been in a consistent and constant state of expansion since we started in 2020. And it is a challenging proposition for a small organization to expand at that level. We've been growing incrementally by kind of giant chunks. And because we have to procure energy in advance of serving that energy, that means we have to, that's when we have to rely upon letters or lines of credit to buy that energy without having any revenue coming in. It's good at this point to be getting our feet under us and stabilizing economically and being able to put some reserves aside for some of these programs and rate stabilization. That said, we do not close the door to potential expansions. There are other member agencies or cities in the county of San Diego that have not yet joined community choice program, one of the two in the county, including the cities of Poway and Coronado. So there are expansion opportunities. Again, we are not actively pursuing those. Typically, for example, the city of San Clemente several years ago was interested. Their council was approached, my understanding is approached CEA to see about the potential for including them. That does not appear to be a priority of theirs today, but that doesn't mean it won't be in the future. So again, our door is open, but at this point, we're not actively seeking to expand. I don't know if there were other, we do, what I did want to say is during our community outreach, we did at least one outreach to a mobile home park. I don't know if we did one in Oceanside. We did one in Vista. So we do try to make sure we're trying to hit all the aspects of the community. And your comment was made by members of the board in terms of tailoring our communications, not only from a language perspective, but from reaching hard to reach customer bases, people who don't have computers or active access to the internet, whether it's via direct mailers or outreach events. So we appreciate those comments. Again, our board has asked us to look at ways to expand our reach. And then this was not a comment of yours, but I did want to respond to Member DeCino's question about the level pay program. We do offer many of the programs, including Care and Fair, that SDG&E does, and that is also one of them. So our customers are eligible for the level pay plan or program. There's another question I didn't get to of yours.
Microgrids.
Sorry?
Microgrids.
Oh, that was your question. The program I think you're referring to is our local solar program. We did establish that for development of microgrids within our jurisdictions. They are subject to proposals from the energy development community, and for whatever reason, we have not gotten applications under that program. However, we are working with a couple energy developers, including one right now, actively hoping to move forward with a microgrid program for commercial properties throughout our service territory. So again, something we're always looking to do in terms of localizing our grid and providing benefit to our customers.
Hi, I'll speak up next. Sorry for the two-page sort of stream of consciousness output here, but I had gone to the CEA board meeting, and so I had seen the presentation, so I thought about it for a while, and these are some of the ideas I came up with. Particularly, I wanted to see us emphasize more the local production and local storage to try and get away from this situation where we're bringing in energy from hundreds of miles away and paying 3 times as much for the transportation as we do for the energy. And the only way to get around that, I see, is to generate it locally. And so I'd like to see that emphasized. I know that it's in there in various places. Another thing is, as far as residential goes, it seems to me that the best thing you can do for a residential customer, somebody who owns their home, is put solar on their house, because the cost of energy from a solar system on their roof is like 5 times less than SDG&E rates or CEA rates at this point. So that, and it's kind of I know it's kind of a difficult thing for CEA, because encouraging people to put solar on their roof decreases the load that they're paying to CEA. And so it's kind of counterproductive in the sense of a business, if you think of CEA as a business, but in terms of making the cost to the consumer less, I think that's the very best thing you can do to somebody. And I think for storage, for instance, it helps, and it helps with it, especially now with the net metering agreements that are coming online. As far as other things I wanted to emphasize, electrification is the way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. You know, most of the emissions from our houses now are from our water heater and to some extent our heaters, our furnaces. So if you can get those electric, you're doing a real hit on the greenhouse gas production locally within the cities. And the problem I see with that is that if you're paying 45 cents a kilowatt hour, it makes the economics kind of iffy to electrify that from gas. I mean, gas prices are going up too, but that's a pretty high rate. If you put in solar and then electrify, then you've got a much lower rate of electricity cost from the solar. And so the electrification looks a lot better. So I can just have that. And then finally, the microgrid thing is something I've thought about a lot. And it's got, you know, nice features for, you know, spreading the energy around and stuff. But I think it also has features for resiliency and for safety for the communities. So that's why I emphasize in my little thing here, having, you know, community resources be able to be microgrids that could sustain themselves if we lose the grid. So that's sort of the three biggest things I had in here. And then I went on to do things like Dan was suggesting in my CEA policy elements there. Number 2 was to limit compensation for anyone in CEA to like 3 times the average or something. It's obviously CEA is a lot different than something like a manufacturing company where you've got, you know, peons doing work over here and you got a CEO that's going out and selling things over here. Pretty much, I'm thinking that CEA is always going to be pretty top heavy. You're always going to have a lot of really highly talented and technical people, and you aren't going to have a lot of grunts. So, but still, I think that having that as a policy, you know, with whatever multiplier you want to put in there might make people feel better about the organization, that it's not going to get out of line and, you know, not going to have billion-dollar salaries for everybody. And along with that was the item 3 there, management budget, you know, pick a number, but like never to exceed 4% of the income or the revenue. You know, pick a number to 4%, 3%, whatever you think is achievable and reasonable. But that's a way of giving people a good feeling about the company that it's not out for itself. And being nonprofit helps a lot to start with. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was just the number 4 policy element item, which was, I think it'd be neat if you had a bonus pool that was based on the cost reductions to customers, so that as people think about ways to make better programs and so if you can save people money and then have that be a basis for a bonus pool for the employees, I think that would make the employees more engaged. And I think in general, you could have a rewards program that would reward people who came up with good ideas and helped, you know, save customers and the company money and reward them. You know, lots of places have that sort of thing. And it's a very, very incentivizing thing. If you know that if you come up with a really good idea and you save, you know, the company hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe you get $1,000 out of it. So I'll leave it at that. You can read through what I've got and see if there's anything you want to adopt in there. But those are the sort of the big things that I was thinking of when I was going through this. Thanks.
All right. Member Nagamini.
Actually, Nagamine. Thank you. I generally like the principles. I would like to see one word clearly, equity. That's the word I would like. I looked for it and it wasn't there. If that equity included, probably that would address that. The items that Daniel's just mentioned, like inclusion of hard to reach people, or inclusion or reaching out people with the language barrier. These are I would say that's probably covered by that equity issue. So I'd like to see that language clearly somewhere in here. That's all.
All right, just really quick, did you get enough feedback? You have a copy of this? Everybody has a
Yes,
copy
thank
of
you very much.
Roger's report. My final comment is, and this is just from the landscape, from the legislature landscape, you know, if we don't have a federal advocate, we don't have somebody working for us in DC and one dedicated to our organization in Sacramento, I think that's money well spent. So you did talk about it. I just didn't know where the board was in allocating funds for that, but it would be very timely. So with that, we're moving to the next item before, go ahead, I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll start with Joe.
Thank you. I'd like to support your comments about distributed energy. I think that's clearly the right way forward. And there's a key part of virtual power plant technology that I think maybe deserves some discussion or at least consideration. A small example, there's a housing development in New Zealand, 220 homes. Every home was given a microgrid. Virtual power plant technology was managing the batteries and didn't allow the batteries to get below 20% load. At times of heavy load, instead of turning on an SDG&E peaker plant, you know, gas, terrible, dirty stuff, the VPP software reaches in and retrieves energy from the batteries on the microgrids, on the residences and so forth, and the businesses, and displaces the need for gas peaker plants. And the people who own the batteries earn an income for having their energy accessed. So this is a key part of managing, orchestrating, if you will, a set of microgrids and bringing benefit to clean energy and economic benefit everywhere, except for SDG&E.
Okay, so Joe, before you finish, since you are one of our new members and we have heard from Daniel, will you just introduce yourself? You know, obviously name it first and last name, the city you represent, and what unique talent you probably will be bringing or you are bringing to the community. Okay, happy to do. I'm Joe Hood. I'm part of the Vista contingent with Nancy. And I am president of North County Climate Change Alliance. Tonight, I'm doing a presentation on Zoom, part 2 of 3 on the state of the planet's environment today. I am a member of the executive committee of the San Diego chapter of the Sierra Club, and I chair the executive committee of the North County group of the Sierra Club. I am a very active member of the United Nations Association, where we're supporting working to support the UN in developing the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And I also I'm an advisor to Clean Earth for Kids, an advisor to the Friends of Lake Hodges. Occasionally I sleep. And I have a very deep interest in environmental issues and protecting and healing our environment. And that includes climate, but goes beyond it. I like to use personally the model of the planetary boundaries as a better, more comprehensive way of looking at where our planet is today than just climate. Climate's one of the 9 boundaries, but there's a great deal more that we have to pay attention to. All right. And then just Jazz, if you would, do you have a comment as well? If you could just introduce yourself really quick so everybody knows what city you're from, and go ahead.
I'm Jazz Graywall. I'm from the city of Del Mar. And I've been involved with the city for a number of years, serving on the finance committee. I'm currently a planning commissioner. I chaired their task force on affordable housing in 2020. I've done a lot of other things in the community, served on the San Diego Museum of Art for volunteered for over 25 years, on their board for 8 years, and started a support group, and also was part of the La Jolla Town Council. I was appointed to Scott Peters' seat when he went on to become council member on the city of San Diego, and then was reelected. So I've just done a lot of things, and I'm really here to learn and contribute in any which way I can. I was a banker by profession. So again, background in finance. And my question really has to do with understanding how I can contribute. And I realize on all of the boards that I've been on, if there's an agenda and there's, for example, the strategic plan that we have to discuss and comment on, we usually get a copy of that in the agenda so that we can prepare for it. I notice everyone's been making comments, so I presume, is the expectation here that if there's something like this, that we go on the website and find the particular plan and then prepare? I need to understand so that I can be more effective moving forward.
Yes, thank you for your question. Typically, we don't provide staff reports or additional materials for CAC agendas. It's just the CAC agenda and the work plan. This is my first experience with having a strategic plan as part of an agenda item for the CAC meetings. So we will definitely make note of that for future items that have documentation like this. But the strategic plan was part of the board agenda at the January meeting. So it is currently on the website. And I believe that's probably where many of our CAC members were able to find that document. But I appreciate your feedback, and we'll consider that moving forward with other items.
Thank you.
Just before we get started with our discussion about the work that we do, Daniel, did you did introduce yourself? You're from Oceanside. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, not, but I look forward to working with my fellow commission members. As I said, on the other commission I'm on, I always hear lots and lots of stories about how people are struggling with their utility bills and the cost of rent. So I look forward to working with the rest of my commission members and maybe hopefully addressing some of those issues that I hear about all the time. Thank you.
Great. So with that, and just on Jasmine's question, I would be willing, and maybe staff could do a Zoom meeting or something just to give them a short orientation, what their work is, what the scope is. I know we went over the structure and the procedure today, and you can always call me, you can call other members. We'd be happy to help you navigate your newness, but I'm sure you're well-versed in work we're going to do here. So with that, we're on item number 5. This is ad hoc CAC subcommittees discussion and possible formation. And I believe, Greg Wade, are you doing this as well?
Yeah, so this is the final item on the agenda. Let me move it up here. Oops. And there's really no presentation other than last year, the Community Advisory Committee voted to form ad hoc committees to discuss various areas of interest or topics of consideration and form those committees and work to develop ideas that would benefit the board in terms of implementing their directed programs. And we're open to that discussion today. There's no, again, subject to the policies of the CAC, there's no requirement that this be done, but that is something that the committee chose to do last year. And so really leave it up to you to see if you would like to pursue that again this year. And if there is that desire, identify those areas. And then our guidance would be that they align with our board directed policies, many of which are in the strategic plan, the draft strategic plan.
think one thing that would be helpful if you could list off our committees from 2024, so at least our new members would understand what the scope of our work was last year on those subcommittees. Do you have access to that? Okay.
Yes, thank you. I have the 2024 subcommittees. First, I will just note that there were no public comments for this item. And these are ad hoc subcommittees, so they did sunset at the end of the year, and the same topics cannot be carried over into a new subcommittee this year if we choose to form them. So the 2024 subcommittees were EV infrastructures and incentives, programs for disadvantaged communities, 100% green by 2035, outreach to new communities, and outreach to schools in our jurisdiction.
And the second to last one was outreach to new communities. Is that what it was? Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, I believe that was in alignment with the enrollment of Oceanside and Vista.
Okay. And then I would note that the year-end reports for all of these committees were submitted to the board. I know they were on the consent agenda. There was no discussion at the board, so I think I'm going to have to ask Greg Wade to give us some feedback on the result of that work and how that was either integrated or eliminated in the plan for our 2025. And I think that would help us understand possible committees that we could bring forward to continue our work.
Thank you, Chair. So the board and I meet ahead of every board meeting, each member. We have briefings. I have briefings with each board member, not just before each board meeting, but on occasion throughout the month. I did receive some feedback from board members on the work or the reports that the committees provided. And to the extent that those comments align with our strategic plan, I tried to point out where some of that found its way into our strategic plan. I think the primary focus is on, again, wherever these programs that you guys or the reports that you put forward align with affordability and reaching out to communities of concern, whether they be low income, disadvantaged, what have you, as well as expanding our communications into hard to reach communities. Those were the areas that board members that brought up the reports during our one-on-ones focused on. So I would suggest that the work that was done and the reports that were done on 100% that was another topic, is to achieve that 100% goal, is to see how we can expand our local generation as well as our programs that create the kinds of things we're talking about, virtual power plants, distributed microgrids, those kinds of things that I think the board was supportive of the reports that came forward and encouraged by that information. The EV, I didn't get a lot of feedback on the EV committee, mostly because through our best efforts, the programs that we tried to work with and the grant applications we tried to pursue just didn't come to fruition. It wasn't for lack of effort, but I just wanted to report that we took that one seriously, and we're still taking that on as a task. I'm trying to remember the other committee that. Yes, so we have been at, the board has also asked us to work more closely with our member agencies. Not that we aren't. We routinely meet with our sustainability staff cohorts or colleagues at all our member agencies. We have a group meeting, and then we meet individually specifically to work with them on advancing to 100% renewable. And we've been working closely, as I mentioned, with the city of Carlsbad, and working closely also with the Carlsbad School District in their latest approach. So we're challenged a little bit in reaching out to residential customers, but we have an active engagement with our key accounts, our businesses, to get those to be part of that Green Impact Champion or Green Impact Champion program. So that was something our board was very supportive of and encouraged that the committee had spent some time providing feedback to us and discussing how we could best achieve that. So the other thing that came out of that was, as I mentioned early in the presentation, this idea of revisiting our premiums, because the fiscal sustainability of the side of the house and how we provide these products cannot be discussed without exploring what kind of financial impacts that might have. So the board was very supportive of looking at revisiting that premium, especially if we're going to have potential member agencies. And we talked about this at the committee last year on a couple of occasions. If member agencies are going to decide as a whole to set their default product at 100%, we really need to make sure that whatever costs we're charging for that product are going to cover our costs for procurement of that energy. The good news is, when we started doing this analysis at the end of last year, based on some of this feedback from the committee on trying to get to 100% and more customers opted up, when we looked at revisiting the premium, the cost of renewables was such that the premium was going to escalate quite a bit. I think you cited something like 2%. The good news is that renewable energy costs have been coming down since that time. We ran those numbers in October, November, and I will say that they have dramatically fallen in the course of the last several months on both renewable energy credits and resource adequacy costs. So that's encouraging. And because of that, when we updated the cost premium analysis, we saw a dramatic decrease in what that premium would have to be. So it's a moving target, but those were the areas that the board, in terms of reading those reports, the feedback they gave, I think they focused on those primary issues from your reports.
Right. You look like you're leaning. Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry I had to step out and I missed some of the strategic plan. One thing I wanted to talk about is I don't know if it was mentioned and I missed it, was reliability. I think that's important to most people. We talked about possibility of brownouts, blackouts, stuff like that. Is there a way for us to build a grid that is sustainable but also reliable? We talk about energy storage, but not small batteries in the garage. We have to do something. That's has to be part of our portfolio. And the people are nervous about seeing batteries on fire. So I think it starts with a policy. Do we have a policy? If a developer or supplier wants to come to us and say, we're going to build 5 megawatts and we're going to put it here, is there a strategic plan for where that goes? Location, of course, not in the middle of the city. I mean, is there a policy or is there a draft or something going on? Or I think we're going to need, sounds like batteries, large scale, and for reliable energy to our customers.
I know you're going to answer that, but I was just going to say that's kind of the previous item, which I know you were out of the room.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
I feel like it's a valid question, but I also wanted to ask you, are you proposing a ad hoc committee? I mean, with the experts, energy experts on our,
I mean, yes, it could be an ad hoc that, we could put heads together, and if we don't already have something, like I said, I'm sorry, I did miss part of the meeting. If it was discussed sooner, I apologize, but I just think it's something people are looking for, as well as affordable, but also reliable.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was dying for a place to put this in, and Greg, I'm sorry you didn't mention it. The agreement that was approved at the last board meeting to get involved with the Navy at Pendleton with their flow battery that they're putting in. And I really want to get a tour of that once they get it started, but maybe you can update us on that, because that's really got the right features. It's a big battery, multiple megawatt hours of storage, and it's right here. It's right on the border of our town. So I'll leave it to you.
Thank you for those questions. The issue of reliability and storage, energy storage is a very, again, keep saying hot topic, and it's probably not the best word to use, but it is, particularly with the safety as well as meeting the overarching goal of recognizing that energy storage is a absolute in terms of meeting our renewable energy goals. And then, okay, how best to design them to be safe and effective and those kinds of questions. So very topical. I think those issues are being discussed throughout the county and the state. As I mentioned, the Moss Landing fire that you may have read about is generating a lot of debate and discussion and potential legislation. So that could be a very important topic area to sort of dive into. We are planning to start discussions, just board information. Not that they haven't been advised of storage technologies, but we're going to start with this next board meeting, just having an overarching discussion about battery storage. And typically we're talking about utility scale battery storage rather than something on the order of, 5 megawatts is getting close to that. But it is an important aspect of what we do. I will say just high level that storage today is not the same as storage even pre-2020. And a lot of these fires we're seeing are facilities that are built pre-2020 because the NFPA regulations have changed in that 2019, 2020. That said, I was going to bring up, and thank you, Member Davenport, the board did approve a term sheet for a storage project, a 6 megawatt project at Camp Pendleton. And it's an interesting project because it's for a couple of reasons. One, that it has a good deal of funding to provide defensive readiness requirements for backup power for Camp Pendleton, which is a major issue or benefit. And then also because that is a limited potential unknown outcome, they need an off-taker for that storage. And we hope that to be CEA. And the other part is that it is a non-flow technology, not a a lithium ion or lithium ion phosphate, but rather a zinc bromide technology. So it's not, doesn't have thermal runaway potential. It's much more stable. We don't know how effective it is. Lithium ion storage batteries are very effective and cost efficient, but it is a zinc bromide technology. So exciting project. We're still working on the details of the agreement with them on that, but it would provide a couple things: resource adequacy for us and what's known as midterm reliability. The other thing we have to recognize is that the state of California is requiring every load serving entity to have storage as part of their portfolio and to have long duration storage. And that's another thing this project is. It's 8-hour storage, not typically your lithium ion batteries. You see 4-hour storage. So it's a long duration storage, midterm reliability compliant and resource adequacy project. So that's that. We still have a lot of work to do on that project, but all of which is to say storage is a key component of everything we're doing. We're actively engaged with local agencies, talking to them, engaging with them. And again, we're going to start a conversation with our board so that because these kinds of projects are coming forward, whether they be local distribution projects, I mentioned a project we're working on for several commercial facilities throughout our service territory that's coming forward. We wanted to have the board as knowledgeable and the best information they can have going forward so that when we bring a solar storage project forward, and if it is lithium ion, they can have some level of confidence that it's a safe project as well. So that was a long answer to say, yeah, we are working on those things as well. Yeah, the other thing too is, thank you. If the committee chooses to move forward with ad hoc committees and has an idea of a couple, I've heard virtual power plants, which, obviously a lot of what we're doing can be categorized under that. Our Solar Plus program, our distributed microgrid programs that we're working on all have the ability to dispatch batteries, and we would have control of those batteries for dispatch purposes. Same with our battery only program to provide that sort of virtual power plant framework. If that's one I hear battery energy storage. If you have other ideas and you want to later in the year form an ad hoc committee, they don't all have to be formed right now. So in the interest of time, if there's a couple ideas you have now and you want to come back, I think that would work. We're a little over time, but we do have this room until at least 4. Anyway.
So one suggestion for a subcommittee that maybe we can consider is, since the goal is to really get people to up the renewable and get up to 100%, I find that communication is really, really important. And based on the very limited things that I see that come to my house, it's really not very conducive. It's a lot of tiny print, and somebody has to sit and read it. And if you're not going to read it, which most people aren't because it's just too difficult, they're just not going to consider that. So maybe that's where we could, find ways to, or make recommendations on how to reach people and make it easy for them to understand the decision point, to be able to say, yeah, we should do this.
I think there's a multi-tiered approach, because we have and I'm assuming based on what staff mentioned, is that these committees from last year that we mentioned will not be coming forward. They would have to be sort of reconfigured into something else and have a membership that is different. And I think certainly the work that the green, getting to 100%, that crosses over into that. And then we talked about the ability to communicate where communities understand the information, right? So there's that piece too. So maybe that under the umbrella of community communication would be a good one to discuss, possibly areas that improvements could be made. I mean, we've got a really good comms team. We've got a great marketing team. I think what you would be bringing back is, this is my community and this is not how to reach them, right? The work that you're doing. How are we going to reach them? So if anybody has a name for that committee and what the reason that ad hoc committee would exist, communication or a broader thing, then I think that would be something that we could add, and it might help get the 100% green ideas moving forward as well as part of that.
But you
So-
said it, community communication.
What's that?
You said it, community communication.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that one if you feel like that is broad enough or it's too broad. I mean, it is a pretty broad one. Yeah, Paige?
I just wonder, can any of these ad hoc committees work with staff? I'm just thinking, if we're talking about communications and outreach, I mean, we've got Rob back there, we've got Caitlin, that, that's kind of what you guys do. So it seems like we should be working together instead of independent of each other. So I don't know, is that appropriate or not for a committee?
Thank you for the question. I would say that all the committees should be interacting with staff in terms of the work they're doing, so that, last time there was quite a bit of discussion about independently committees going to, say, member agency staff, and our preference is you work through our staff so that we all know what we're doing and engaged in the same manner. So the short answer is I would expect your committees to be interacting with our staff to make sure that, or to share ideas. I mean, you're the liaison between the community and the board through us.
And
So we're the conduit from you to the board.
And I know you're still doing outreach to communities, but we're not involved in that anymore. And I know some of us are probably happy to help out. So is that still appropriate to utilize us as part of your outreach effort?
When there's a need, we will absolutely, we can call upon you guys. I think the idea last year was you had a committee for that. And so we were engaged and wanted to, divide and conquer, so to speak, but that can be arranged as well.
So getting back to the one ad hoc committee that we have on the floor for discussion was the community communication. You guys can rename it if there's a better name, but we need some members. Is anyone, we could start with Jasmine. I know that's also Dolores's area of expertise, so she may be interested in also participating in that. I know she's on. Are there any other volunteers, and Paige?
Yeah, I would be happy to serve on that. And Jazz, I don't think, you probably haven't been able to see the reports, the subcommittee reports, but the Green by 2035 subcommittee report, and I was the chair of that, is all communications and outreach. And it's really the result of a lot of contacts that were made to other CCAs that have been operating a lot longer than ours, and what kind of hurdles they dealt with and how they attempted to address them in terms of communications and increasing awareness. And I mean, clearly there is a lack of true understanding of what CCAs are all about. It's a common problem, not just with ours. But I can forward that report to you, or maybe it might not be a bad idea for all of the new members to see the reports from last year. And if there were real value added, I think, in moving forward with some of the, with a communications and engagement subcommittee or whatever that would work with staff, with Kaylin, or whoever Greg would think was appropriate. I think that, I'd be happy to serve on that.
I was going to ask something more.
Thank you.
I think, are the reports on the website?
Yes, the reports
Yes.
were an attachment to the Community Advisory Committee item with the last board meeting agenda. So I don't recall the item number, but it was the work plan and the adopted calendar. And then there was 3 of the 5 that we received. Those are an attachment to that item.
So, yeah,
I'll be
go
on the
ahead.
committee too, please.
Okay.
I've been trying to get your attention.
Oh,
I would also like to add, moving forward, that we want to just be sure that the ad hoc committees that we're discussing today are significantly different than what happened last year. So I've heard some crossover topics and issues that we discussed this last year. Try to be clear when these ad hoc committees are created that you're discussing new topics.
Yeah, so I think on the table for that committee is an overview of communication and how that can be improved to service. And then we also had the suggestion from Daniel that we might not be reaching our community where they are. If everything's online or it's in the mail, maybe that's not the way. So I think that would be maybe part of that discussion. I think that would be okay. I'm asking for direction.
Yes, I believe that does sound sufficient as well. However, we do have a substitute general counsel in at this meeting. And so Ms. Mitchell, who's usually at our meetings, is much more familiar with the subcommittees that happened last year. So I'll be sure to touch base with her once we have a final slate of what you would like to see as for the subcommittees. And then if there's any discrepancies or any further discussion needed, we can continue this at the next CAC meeting.
Okay.
But I know you were taking notes of the members who were interested. Do you mind just repeating the names of who you have so I have them as well?
I have Paige, Dolores, Jazz, and Linda. That's first names. You want last names too? You got that. Okay.
No, just names or first names are fine for now. But remember, we would like a chair for these meetings as well. So if anyone is willing to be the chair, we can note that in this as well.
I think I would let them meet and decide who they want their chair to be. So can we put that on the agenda for
Sure.
next month to revisit this? Because I think maybe people, this is a long meeting, so we're about to wrap up. And I think maybe we can come back with, if people have had time to think about it and look over last year's work. And then one more comment here.
Well, I was going to just recommend a subcommittee of something like integrating storage and including VPPs and microgrids and various kinds of storage from utility scale down to, putting something next to somebody's refrigerator. And that way we could look at what other people are doing in that area and then come up with some recommendations maybe for how we can make that work in our area.
Okay,
Can you summarize that subcommittee into a couple of words that is easier, battery storage or?
I would say, yeah, integrating storage into our system.
integrating battery storage, right?
Yeah,
Is that
well,
what you're
storage.
Talking about, or just storage? Okay.
Energy.
And I have storage. Roger,
I'd be in that.
Kevin, did you want to be on that? Okay, Micah? Do you want to be on that?
All right. Yes, I'd like to be on that.
Okay, I have 3. Anybody else? Okay, good, Joe. All right.
Can-
Could
Okay.
you repeat for the record who is interested in serving on that subcommittee,
Do
please?
you want me to read the names or what, you want them just to raise their hands so you can
Raise
see
your
them?
hands.
Raise your hand.
Okay. Did you get everybody?
Keep your hands up, please.
Mhm.
Okay, we got them. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
I have one quick question.
Go ahead.
Greg said that there's no longer 2%. What is it, 1.5%? To upgrade to green impact? You said November. you
We
changed
don't
it
have the
to-
current number right now. The last time we ran the numbers, and we didn't do it on percentage, it was cents per kilowatt hour. And so we were looking at back in November, as high as almost 2.9 cents per kilowatt hour for the premium. And today it's half that, roughly. And again, this is a moving target because energy markets tend to move.
Okay. So
Deborah,
go ahead,
um,
Paige.
we don't have Clean Energy Alliance email accounts anymore, and I don't have everyone's email account. So is there some way we can rectify that so that we can talk to each other
Yes,
without
yes,
violating the Brown Act?
yes, I can distribute that information.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay, with that, just a reminder, our next meeting is April 10th. Same place, same time. If you are new and you have questions, please reach out. Can we publish a roster of all members or were you thinking about just distributing community members?
Yes,
I'm talking about with contact emails.
yes, I can distribute the committee members' email address to the whole committee as long as there's no concerns. If anybody would not like that information shared, they can let me know. But I will plan to send out a full roster to the committee with contact information and just for public information, all subcommittees, I'm sorry, all committee members are listed on the website without contact information, but with their respective cities.
Okay,
As
and then
an
we
update.
do have a few absent today. I would check with them on their comfort zone with sharing.
Yes,
Because we
thank
used to have all clean energy emails, so it's much easier. Okay, so with that, I would just encourage, especially our new members to reach out across and, get your questions answered. I'm sure we're all willing to talk to you about what's happened, where we've been and where you can connect. And certainly you have access to staff as well. So any other comments? With that, can I get a motion to adjourn? So second? All in favor? Aye, all right.
Any opposed?
Yeah, I don't think there was.
Sorry, any opposed to the
All right.
motion?
Meeting adjourned.
We don't need a motion to adjourn.